Every October since 2011, Retro Movie Geek has brought you the spooky side of retro movies. And this year is no different. So join us in our perilous search through darkened and abandoned basements for some perhaps less talked about horror movies from the 1980s. But remember, we spoil the hell out of every movie we cover, so consider yourself forewarned. Spooky Flix Fest starts now.
Well, welcome everyone to the Father and Son Watch Horror Movies entry for Retro Movie Geek's Spooky Flix Fest 2024. I am your co-host for this apocalyptic episode, the Father, aka Pastor Matt, and I am joined as always by my trusty co-host,
Jackson the Son, and the end might be nigh, but so is Halloween. So for the time being, I'm sitting pretty.
There you go. So I'm sure we got a lot of people who listen to both Retro Movie Geek and Father and Son. How are things going for you? This is your senior year of film school.
Yeah, that's right. And when I said the end is nigh, I mean thesis season is nigh.
Yeah.
And it's going to be something. It's 24/7 bouncing off the walls, but it's the good kind of busy. It's the kind of busy where you're like, I'm doing something. So excited about that. Going to make some cool horror and thriller projects that I'm attached to. So excited about that. And yeah, and before I can get to that, one last hurrah before we go into thesis season, we're talking about one that I had never seen before, and I was very excited that it was an option for Spooky Flix Fest, because I'd been looking for a reason to watch it, an excuse to watch it, and I really dig this one.
All right, well, we are talking about from 1988, The Seventh Sign. So the IMDb synopsis reads, Abby Quinn, played by Demi Moore. Abby Quinn is eagerly awaiting childbirth, but is haunted by dreams where she suffers a miscarriage. When she decides to rent a room to a mysterious stranger, she realizes a chain of events that will unleash the end of humanity. That's true-ish.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to get butts in seats, because if you give them the whole picture, they're going to be like, huh? Because it does get a little convoluted, I would say. The mythology of this film is a little convoluted, but it's cool. It's big. It's apocalyptic, and that's something I wanted to say. I mean, like, I didn't know what to expect going in. I thought this would just be like kind of a small, which it really is. It's kind of a smaller film when you really think about what we see. But the first act starts off like The Exorcist or something. It's got that like globe trotting, that grand scale kind of thing, which isn't really how the movie ends up playing out. But no. I kind of wish we got more of that, actually, because it actually at times, and this is going to sound crazy, at times it actually feels more like The Exorcist 2. With its like biblical visions and implied apocalyptic scale, but I can say much better than The Exorcist 2, which, by the way, I do enjoy. It's maybe the worst film of all time, but it's so much fun to watch. You cannot say that's not a fun watch.
I can, and I will. But anyway, so you answered my first question, which is when did you first see The Seventh Sign? So you just saw this like a week or so ago.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd had it on DVD for a long time. You gave me it's like a quadruple feature, one of those.
Yeah,
and it's the most random selection of 80s films you could possibly. They have nothing to do with each other, but yeah, The Seventh Sign is the last one I hadn't seen from that collection, and
it's not the Demi Moore collection.
It's not the Demi Moore collection, if you can believe it. Yeah, if they would lump this in with Ghost.
Not the Michael Bean collection, not the
Michael Bean collection either.
Collection?
No, and not the Jürgen Prochnow collection. This and David Lynch's Dune. No,
and Das Boot and Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Ah, yes. Yeah. Only the best.
Yes.
Or Peter Friedman, the star-studded cast. And I'm not even totally being ironic when I say that. It is a great cast. I mean, this thing is this thing is
Peter
stacked.
Friedman, who was married to Joan Allen at the time.
Yes, which is a wild. That's one of those wild Hollywood couplings. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I will say, yeah, you
The
said
poor man Stanley Tucci.
Yes, yeah. I think he fits comfortably into that niche. He's happy there.
Yeah, the balding theater actor who occasionally does TV and film. Yeah,
I would be so lucky.
I first saw this when it came out on video in like 1989. I think I rented this from like Odyssey Video on Lankershim Boulevard in North Hollywood, if I remember correctly. And I remember liking it. I don't think I've seen it all the way through since. So it's been a minute, since I've seen this. But the plot basically, Demi Moore is I think she only alludes to her career, right? Once she's like a restorationist or something, and she's pregnant. The IMDb summary is a little misleading. She's not really having dreams about a miscarriage. She had a miscarriage, and that she attempted suicide after that. She's pregnant again with her husband, Michael Biehn, who is a criminal defense lawyer. He is representing a young man with Down syndrome on death row who was convicted of killing his parents because his parents were brother and sister. And so then they're renting out to make a little more money. They're renting out a garage apartment on their property, and it's rented out by Jürgen Prochnow, AKA Jesus.
That's right. Which
they
is
rent a garage apartment to Jesus.
To Jesus, who asks if they ever have car fumes go up into that room.
Was that him on the phone? We're never really told, But
I believe it is, and my favorite. I mean, this movie throws a number of twists at you, but the first is that yes, Jesus is German and he does wear sweaters. Confirmed. That is confirmed theology in the Seventh Sign.
It's better than in most movies where for some reason he is a feathered hair British actor, don't you think?
Right. Sure. I mean, yeah, I guess German is closer, ? But
not really.
But it's something. And,
can you not find a Palestinian actor, Hollywood, anywhere?
I guess not. But yeah, so it's certainly an interesting turn of events. And also, you talked about the Michael Biehn thing. I'm honestly more invested in the Michael Biehn court procedural than the main plot.
There is. So the main plot is that Jesus has come to Earth. He is unleashing the seventh seals. It's called the seventh sign, but I think they wanted to make sure they didn't confuse it with
Bergman movie.
With the Bergman movie.
Easily confused with that. I would say that level of quality.
Very, very. Yeah, we all know that Ingmar, that Bergman and Carl Schultz get confused all the time.
Yes.
Carl Schultz, who went on to direct nothing but TV in the 90s after this.
Sure.
So basically he's come to Earth. He's unleashing the seven seals from the book of Revelation on the earth, including, the sea, everything in the sea dying and the rivers turning to blood and earthquakes and hail. And for some reason, Sodom and Gomorrah is frozen.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
That one's weird.
I think they found that easier to communicate than like the whole lot, turning to salt thing.
It's cool scene, but it's it's weird.
Yeah, it's cool. Cool matte paintings. We get some cool matte paintings when we're shown the apocalyptic stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's definitely the coolest part of the movie. This kind of biblical scale. But like you said, for the most part, we're following Demi Moore and Michael Biehn as they go about their day-to-day lives. And it takes them a while to kind of catch on to the idea that maybe this guy is a little strange. This guy that's rooming over their garage. It's just funny to me how immediately charmed they are by David, despite him being, kind of creepy. It's like he doesn't exactly seem like a great conversationalist, but they're like, "Oh, David, you're the best." So that's interesting. But
when he's telling, the stories about the sparrow seeing the souls descend from heaven, from the guff, and all other kind of stuff, then let's face it, LA couples are weird. They're into it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. That explains
So
everything.
yeah,
Sorry. Forgot about
yeah, and so they're into it. They buy it. This guy's got a lot of old stories. And he's very, very old school, with the exception of the Cosby sweaters.
Sure.
He's got a
That's
shortwave
one new
radio.
trend you can get behind. I like that. Yeah.
In 1988, what we didn't know was not hurting us.
Yeah.
Only certain, women that dared to get around Bill Cosby.
Sure.
But so this is what's going on. And then apparently one of the seals, or one of the end thing that bring around the end of humanity, the apocalypse, is a baby being born without a soul, which turns out to be Demi Moore's baby, because the guff where souls are kept is empty and God's mercy is at an end. And so that's going on. But then we also have we really have two subplots going on, right?
Yeah.
So we've got, what's his name? Peter Friedman, is that his name?
Yeah.
Okay, so he is Cardophilius, who, for this movie, he is Pontius Pilate's gatekeeper, who beat Christ, aka Jurgen Prochnow, back, in the day before he was crucified, and he is cursed to wander the earth until the end of the earth by God. That is actually a myth that exists.
Yeah.
But that myth, what they took it from was, I don't know why they did. I think they were just trying not to appear anti-Semitic. The myth is actually a medieval myth. And the guy's name is Cardophilius, but he was actually a Jewish man who cursed Christ while he was taking his cross to Golgotha, and is cursed with the mark of Cain, which is interpreted by medieval rabbis as that he can never, that he's cursed to live until the end of earth. The myth is called the myth of the wandering Jew. It pops up in the Middle Ages. Here they flip the script, and he's no longer a wandering Jew. He worked for Pontius Pilate, and he can't wait for the world to end because he doesn't want to live any longer.
Yeah.
For goodness sakes, he got cursed with eternal life after he'd lost his hair. He's not happy about it.
Sure. Yeah, that's the important part. Yeah.
He's not happy about it.
And he's lost his Roman tan, his Italian tan.
Exactly. Yeah. He's very not Italian looking. And so but Peter Friedman plays this. He is, at some point, Cardophilius has become a Catholic priest and has wormed his way into the Vatican to go investigate this stuff. And he's covering up the fact that he's seeing the seals because he doesn't want anyone to know about it, because he doesn't want anyone to interfere. He wants the world to end so he can finally die. So that's the major subplot. But the other subplot that I agree with you is much more interesting is Michael Biehn is defending this young man, Jimmy, with Down syndrome. And the actor, by the way, was born with Down syndrome, is a working actor, continues to work. Jason Taylor, I think his name is, who plays Jimmy. And Michael Biehn and Demi Moore actually did a documentary, were featured in a documentary about his life as an actor with Down syndrome.
All right.
And so Jason Taylor's still working, and he plays Jimmy. And I agree, because the most sympathetic character here, in my opinion, is Jimmy.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a heartbreaking kind of subplot to see. He doesn't want to plead insanity because that would be like admitting he did something wrong. So he wants to maintain innocence the entire time.
Right.
So
he believes, in his twisted belief, somebody has taught him that basically the Levitical law still applies, and that brothers and sisters can't get married, which his parents were, and so he murdered his parents because they disobeyed the word of God. And so in his mind, he's obeyed the word of God. He's done nothing wrong.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting kind of, it's so strange because so little screen time is really, when you break it down, dedicated to this. But that could have been a whole script in itself, and it kind of is, in stuff like Primal Fear or whatever. There's stuff like that. But yeah, and then the stuff with
Jason Taylor, the actor who's playing Jimmy, he's great.
He's excellent. Yeah. He totally sells it, and it's fantastic. And it's so funny just to cut away from that, because Michael Biehn will be dealing with this thing, this like super heavy topic, and then he gets a call from Demi Moore, and she's like, "My baby is he's Jesus," and he's like, "Oh, what is going on?" Because like it really communicates to us how separate these worlds are. Because
Can I just say that at that moment when Demi Moore is calling Michael Biehn, who's trying to get the governor on the phone, and he finally gets the governor on the phone, and the governor won't wait for him because he's talking to his hysterical wife, that it's like, that it was I the only one watching that going, Demi, call back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like we know that Demi Moore is right, but we can see how from Michael Bihn's perspective it would sound crazy, because he's dealing with this whole thing, and she's just seemingly out of nowhere got this conspiracy theory, which the doctors are telling him is this not postpartum, but this like pregnancy delirium, this like mania, and so he doesn't know. He's torn between these two worlds, which is really interesting. And then, like you said, with the Peter Friedman subplot, that's like the Man from Earth plot. I don't know if you've seen the film The Man from Earth. It's a really, really cool low budget film with it's like an elevator pitch, high concept type thing. But him being that 2,000-year-old Roman soldier is also a really interesting idea that I wish the movie explored more. There are like 3 subplots in this film that I kind of wish were the focus of this film, and that maybe Demi Moore's story was just like a subplot in the wider thing. And I can understand why, from a budgeting perspective, from a marketing perspective, why she would be the main focus. But I can just imagine a version of this movie where it's this grand thing with all these huge ideas, like a Magnolia type thing, where she's just one of many stories in this kind of.
I'm with you. I want to see these other 2 movies. I want to see a movie about Cartophilius, and I want to see a movie about Jimmy. Quite frankly, a little more than I want to see a movie about Demi Moore and her baby and the end of the world.
And like I said, I mean, I know that's how you sell the movie. It's Demi Moore. You know, she was famous from Ghost, and well,
Ghost hadn't come out yet, but she was famous.
Sure.
She. You're right. She came up with the Brat Pack, which there's a new documentary out, and I'll call it Brats, where she does participate in it. Molly Ringwald wouldn't do it. Judd Nelson wouldn't do it. For some reason, Anthony Michael Hall wouldn't do it. But Demi Moore does the documentary. And she kind of blew up in the mid 80s with St. Elmo's Fire and About Last Night and so forth. And she had kind of a high profile romance with first Emilio Estevez, and then with Bruce Willis, of course, who she was married to for many, many years. And she was kind of the it girl at the time. Yeah. And so, it was the first movie with her name above the title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm not super familiar with her filmography. I think this is the thing I would know her from the most. Yeah. And she does a good job in this. So if I was just purely viewing her career from this perspective, I think she does a good job.
The problem for me with the cast is, and I'm not pooping on this movie, I do like it. The problem with the cast, I think Demi Moore is fine. Mm-hmm. I think Michael Biehn in this movie is good. Yeah. I think that Jürgen Prochnow is the right amount of kind of strange that would be if you were, you came back to Earth 2,000 years later. So, but to me, Jason Taylor, who plays Jimmy, and Peter Friedman, who plays Cartophilius, they kind of steal the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but like you said, I mean, I think that Jürgen Prochnow has a kind of Rutger Hauer and Blade Runner kind of feel to him, that kind of odd and wise beyond his years kind of thing going on. But yeah, you're right. Totally. The supporting cast, and the young Jewish boy who helps Demi Moore translate the seal. He's really great in this. I don't even know what his name is.
I'd have to look it up.
Manny Jacobs, I think. Manny Jacobs. And that's the first time I've seen him in something. But
and then you've got a throwaway, not really a throwaway scene, but with John Hurd as playing what looks like an Anglican, priest. And there's some great scenes in here. There is one scene, Carl Schultz had only done like 2 small budget, I think, foreign films before this. He didn't really do anything after this, except I knew that if you looked up his IMDb, you and Joel would be upset if I didn't mention this. He did do many, many episodes of Young Indiana Jones.
All right.
So he did do that in the 90s and 2000s, but he kind of fell off the map about 20 odd years ago, hadn't done anything since. The one kind of scene where I thought was well shot and where I was really invested was the scene where Cartophilius is going out in the middle of this horrendous thunderstorm in the middle of LA, which never happens. So it's the end of the world. Yeah. And because it never rains in LA. And so he walks out of like the abbot or whatever that he's staying in, and he walks out, and there for the first time in 2,000 years is Jesus, Jurgen Prochnow, standing there just staring at him. That's a great scene.
Yeah, and again, that's something they could have explored more. Is that like not feud, but this connection between the two of them that spans 2,000 years? It's really interesting, and that's very The Omen, right? That scene is very like you feel like he's going to be like the priest in The Omen who gets impaled or something's going to happen to him, and yeah, very foreboding, like you said, and all the stuff in the third act when it starts to get apocalyptic, the sky starts darkening, and we get all these cool matte paintings. That stuff is awesome. That stuff is really cool, and that the roads are breaking up, and there's all kinds of traffic jams and hail and stuff. That's really cool, and I could tell a lot of the budget went to that kind of section of the movie. But
I could not find what the budget for this movie was. We do have to say that this was not a box office hit.
No,
it was not a critical hit or a box office hit.
Sure.
It currently only holds a 15% at Rotten Tomatoes.
That's crazy to me. That's because it does have a little bit of a prestige to it. It's not just like trash bargain bin.
Yeah,
There's some really cool stuff in it.
I agree. I mean, more than just having the it girl at the time in Hollywood, it's got a great supporting cast. I mean, Michael Biehn had done the Terminator and Aliens at this point. Peter Friedman, who plays Cardophilius, was a very well-respected theater actor in New York and L.A. Jurgen Prochnow was an incredibly well-respected, like Rutger Hauer, European actor, done a lot of foreign, films, and was very, very well-respected. Das Boot is a great film.
Yeah.
So it's got a great cast, to it, but it made less than $20 million at the box office, and it has 15% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I mean, I wouldn't say that this is the greatest film of the decade or anything, but it's definitely a solid film. Now, I did say earlier there are some convoluted elements to the plot, which I maybe want to break down a little bit that I was thinking about while watching this. And I don't write down like plot things unless it really distracts me from the movie. But one thing I was thinking about, so that the crux of this film is Abby's baby is going to be the first baby born without a soul, because like you said, all the souls from the guff are missing. The well of souls
it's going empty. Yeah, it's being emptied out. Yeah.
There are like 100 million people who are pregnant right now, and like 100 that are born simultaneously. So I mean, maybe less than 1988, but it's just crazy. So I guess David knows that Abby's baby.
You don't believe in God?
Well, I guess David, it's magic. He knows that Abby's baby will be born a millionth of a millisecond before the others. And also, what even constitutes being born? Is it crowning? Is it being fully delivered? The logistics are a little convoluted.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess just don't think about it. In service of some pretty cool apocalyptic imagery. And it is, we touched on this earlier, that flashback scene with Peter Friedman, kind of beating Jesus, and then turning to who we later find out is Demi Moore, I guess, kind of, I don't know if she was physically there, if it's a reincarnation type of thing, or if she's just in that scene, if she's just seeing it. And
Peter Friedman seems to know who she is by looking at her and says to her, "You were there." And so, reincarnation plays.
So is she married?
Part in this.
Did she marry the mother of Jesus? Is that what's implied?
I don't think so. No, okay. I think she's just there. She looks like she's just there. I mean, if she was the mother of Jurgen Prochnow, and that, I mean, she ages well. I mean, Demi Moore,
right?
Demi Moore, has aged well. Period. But wow, for the first century when there's no oils or anything else, that's pretty impressive. So no, I don't think so. Especially when the average age, you were lucky in the first century to live the age 45. So yeah, I doubt it. But there is the reincarnation thing. We do have to talk about. I don't know, the ending.
Yeah.
The ending makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Sure. Yeah. I was about to say it's a really cool set piece. They're in the delivery room, and they're delivering Abby's baby, and the walls are cracking around them.
After she has gotten into death row and seen Jimmy get shot.
Sure. I can't believe I breezed past that. Let's talk about that
by the Catholic priest / pilot, pilot's gatekeeper.
So to break it down, Jimmy is going to be executed because try as Michael Biehn might, he can't get him off the hook, and Jimmy refuses to plead insanity. So he's going to the gas chamber, which, by the way, I still can't believe that was a method of execution. That's for me, that's like one step above the guillotine. But they're bringing Jimmy into the gas chamber, and he's like the last pure soul. If he dies, he will like herald the apocalypse, and then the apocalypse will come, and Abby's baby will be born without a soul. That whole thing.
And he's the last pure soul. And yes, he has Down syndrome, and he's been misled by somebody. But let's be clear, he is a murderer.
Yeah, he did kill his parents.
He does
but
confess
how much
to
of
this.
that, right? How much of that was like, I don't know, in this film, divinely inspired, like he really was? Because he is apparently very important to the apocalypse. So maybe God really did tell him in this universe to kill his parents. I don't know. But yeah, so he's about to be executed, and Demi Moore's got to stop it, because if he is executed, it'll be irreversible. The apocalypse will come.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm getting ready to spend a year teaching through the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul doesn't think the Old Testament law applies anymore. What church was Jimmy going to, man?
Yeah, the theology is a little whack. But yeah, so she's there in the execution chamber, and she's gonna stop him from being executed. She's screaming, "You can't kill him! You can't kill him!" And like, her screaming wasn't going to do it. They were still going to execute him. But then Peter Friedman decides, I'm not taking any chances. So he goes down and pulls a gun out to kill Jimmy, which, like, jumping the gun a little bit, I feel like.
Pun intended. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. And Demi Moore is like Superman. She jumps in front of the bullet, I guess, to stop him from shooting
9 months pregnant.
Yes. Yeah. Not really sure what the plan was there, because it's like, I know she's trying to prevent the apocalypse, but what she's scared of is her baby being born without a soul. If she's killed by gunfire, her baby's not going to be born at all. So interesting strategy. And yeah, so anyways, she jumps in front of the bullet. It seems like she took the bullet for Jimmy, and Jimmy's going to be okay, but she looks over, and Jimmy is not doing good. He's been shot by Peter Friedman. And then the gas from the gas chamber is released, and the poisonous gas starts flooding, but that doesn't really matter because they get them all out. It's a very strange series of events. But anyways, yes, we're in the delivery room. All hell is breaking loose. The apocalypse is happening.
Literally, yes.
The earthquake, and the sun's blotted out from the sky. And since Demi Moore believes and has hope that her son will survive and have a soul, and she sees this flashback to Peter Friedman torturing Jesus and turning to her and saying, "Would you die for him?" And she says, "Yes, I will." And then, because of one person's hope, the halls of souls for all eternity are refilled, I guess.
Somebody hits Alt-Control-Delete.
Exactly.
And here we go.
It's magic. I mean, whatever, but it is a little strange.
It's more than that. Then Jesus walks up to I guess he's a Jewish graduate student or something.
Yeah.
It's kind of how he strikes me. He's like a college student or a grad student or something like that.
He lives
and
across
basically
from the rabbi.
says to write a Bible book about Abby.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So, it's fun, but I mean, that doesn't change. We can get into the specifics all we want, but that doesn't change the fact that there are, really actually some touching moments, especially in that last scene.
Great, especially if you are a person of faith like I am. I mean, there's a scene where, as we talked about, Demi Moore is convinced that David, as she knows him, Jurgen Prochnow, is obsessed with her baby. She finds like writings that mention 229. She thinks it's the baby's birthday because the baby's supposed to be born on the leap year. Yeah. And it turns out, no, that's from Joel 229, the Old Testament, which is strange because at that time there were no verses and chapters in the Bible. But anyway, let's skip past all that. But Jurgen Prochnow playing Jesus. And one other scene I do want to, before I forget, I do think it was funny that when they're eating dinner together, Michael Biehn, Demi Moore, Jurgen Prochnow, they're all eating dinner, and the sparrow flies into the house, and Michael Biehn shouts, "Jesus Christ." That's pretty funny. Because they're basically like eating with Jesus. So that was pretty funny. But that was I think that was a little wink there, either by Michael Biehn or somebody.
Yeah,
that was
100%.
pretty funny. But that being said, it's like there's this scene, if you're a person of faith, where like Jurgen Prochnow is like, your baby's being born because it's your baby's dying because it has no soul. But he says to her, I can't die again, but I would. And for as a person of faith, for me, it's like, oh man, wow. Yeah. And that there are some really moving scenes in this film.
Yeah. Yeah. And I frankly, I kind of wish the entire film had that kind of gravity and momentum that we get in those scenes.
Yes.
But yeah, so there are great moments in this film between actors who are really dedicated to this role. That's the reason that, I mean, you can pick apart the specifics all you want, but that's the reason I'm surprised if you had a 15%, because it should definitely be higher.
And it should be, and maybe some of those, they're counting some of those reviews as negative, even though they're like borderline. Like I read Roger Ebert's review for this, and Roger Ebert gave it a 2 out of 4. And he basically said that he just found basically what we've been talking. He found the ending nonsensical. He found a lot of things ridiculous.
Yeah.
But he did say basically one of the things we said, which is he still found it refreshing that he said that there were like grown up, characters in this movie that he really connected to. He found that refreshing. And I think that's what we've been saying. And it's like, yeah, Jimmy and David and Cardophilius and Michael Bihn's character and so forth. It's like, yeah, these are all, the main character is Demi Moore's Abby, but the supporting characters around her, they never feel like one dimensional.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I mean, really heavy. I mean, you touched on this earlier. When she thinks she's going to miscarry again, she brings herself to the brink of suicide once again. Mm-hmm. I mean, we see her put the razor all the way up to the scar on her wrist where she had attempted before. And it's really, really heavy and like has you cringing in that scene because of how real it is. And it's just funny that kind of heavy thing comes in this film, which a lot of people will put down. I mean, a lot of people will put this down as schlock, but there are really, really heavy scenes in it.
Yeah.
And that scene.
And that scene is, you're right. That scene as she's staring at where she's cut her wrist before she's thinking about doing it again. It is a heavy scene, but by the way, I have to throw this piece of trivia out there. Demi Moore is actually not naked in that scene, and she was not pregnant. That is all prosthetics.
Right.
It's all prosthetics. Sorry, internet, but those are all for some reason. She was pregnant when this movie came out. She was not pregnant when it was being filmed.
Well, that'd be a heavy watch. I feel like when this comes out to watch this when you're pregnant, that would be some. There are a few films like that. Like, don't watch this when you're pregnant.
Yeah.
So this is definitely one. But yeah, super, super heavy scene, and that's definitely one for the real. But yeah, and it's just funny that comes in the Jesus is German and wears sweaters movie. But it's just, this script is strong. I think if maybe this had come in the 90s instead of the late 80s, maybe it would be a little bit more modern and would have kept the time better. But there's solid stuff in here. I mean, the screenplay is solid.
You know what? If it didn't have the ending we've got, which I think both of us were a little like,
there's good elements to it. The emotion behind it is good. The execution.
When you see Jimmy has died, that's a heavy moment. And that's, but I think beyond, here's what I was going to say. If you redo that ending with maybe a darker ending.
Yeah.
I think this movie would have been hit in the 70s.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, this is 100% has that heavy biblical 70s feel.
Yeah.
Just like The Exorcist 2. No.
Oh, you had to. You had to, didn't you?
Yeah. It's no, I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know if you want to get into what we thought overall or overall thoughts and our ratings.
Let's go for your ratings. Yeah, we're running around 30 minutes, which is where Joel wants it to be, so go for it.
I would say, I enjoyed it more than I was expecting to because like you said, 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'd heard a lot of people call this schlock. But I liked it a lot. And overall, I would say this film has a lot of interesting ideas. That's what I would say about it. Now they might be better explored in movies like Primal Fear, Stigmata, The Man from Earth. Those might be themes that are better explored in those films. But it's a pretty solid attempt in this one. I think it's a pretty solid 88 film. And definitely not worth, bombing at the box office and only getting the 15%. So I would go with a 6.5 out of 10 for this one. I would say it's definitely worth a rental. I would say low priority rental, but definitely, if you're looking for something with that vibe, that kind of apocalyptic biblical vibe, this is a pretty solid one. So 6.5 out of 10. I would say low priority rental.
I'm right there with you. I was going to say somewhere between a 6 and a 7, so I'll go 6.5. I agree. I rented this for like $3 or something like that on Amazon. I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
And if you're an 80s completist for horror movies, I think this is definitely something you should watch. And like I said, even if you find the ending ridiculous, you're not a person of faith, whatever, I still think that, that especially the supporting cast and their performances, that alone is worth it. And it's, I agree with you. I think poor Carl Schultz should have got shots to direct more than just young Indiana Jones, even though I'm sure you appreciate that. So. Yeah.
I mean, you can see it a little bit with those scenes in the beginning, the globe-trotting stuff. You can see why. But yeah, I mean, he should have definitely gotten another shot at a thing. I'm surprised I guess they wanted to distance themselves from him after the movie didn't do too well. But you would think that somebody from this cast would want to work with him again and would recommend him. But
apparently not. But anyway, And did you catch one last piece of trivia before we close out?
Yeah.
The screenwriters for this is actually written by the former screenwriting partnership of Ellen and Clifford Green, who were at this point basically known for a minor hit movie called Space Camp from 1986, which I actually saw while on vacation on a rainy day in Myrtle Beach and when I was 14 years old. And it's an okay movie, but they wrote this, but they were so upset with the rewrites that ghostwriters put in that they had their names removed. Ellen Green is known on the poster as W.W. Wicket. And Clifford Green is known as George Kaplan.
Interesting. They didn't go with Alan Smithy.
No, but do you know who George Kaplan is? George Kaplan is the non-existent character in North by Northwest that the bad guys confused Cary Grant with.
Yeah. That's good. That's funny. That's a good bit. If you're gonna if you're gonna take your name off the thing, ditch Alan Smithy. That's old news. You gotta come up with something clever. That's fun. I don't know if you caught recently, but Eli Roth's new movie Borderlands also had a writer take its name off. I forget what he went with, but I know it also wasn't Alan Smithy. But that's my plan. I would be so lucky as to take my name off of blockbuster like this. Well, I say blockbuster, but but I'm making a list, is what I'm saying. I'm making a list of pseudonyms right now.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks, Joel and Peter and Daryl, for inviting us back to do this yet again. I forget how many years we've been doing this for Spooky Flix Fest. We hope you guys enjoy the festival. It's always great. Joel always does an amazing job. Of course, check him out over at Mom and Pop Video Shop. And he just recently, I unearthed something that I bought for him. You and I bought for him. That my wife moved, couldn't find, finally found and shipped to him finally this week. As we're recording this in September 1st, he got the poster you and I bought him from the Mahoning Drive-In of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bogus Journey Double Bill from the Mahoning Drive-In poster. We sent that to him. So that'll be up in the Mom and Pop Video Shop. So,
all right. Yeah, that's a good addition.
All right. So where can they find you online, buddy?
You can find me on Twitter or X, but even Elon calls it Twitter. You can find me at Kane_Hero12. That's KAINE_Hero12. You can find all my links there: Letterboxd, YouTube, etc. All the stuff I'm working on. Catch us over on Father and Son Horror. We're doing some fun stuff.
Yep. And so that's where you can find me, Father and Son Watch Horror, either on Facebook or on X/Twitter. And you can also connect with me via Horror Movie Podcast on Facebook or Twitter. And yes, Horror Movie Podcast will be back. Nathan has about 5 or 6 episodes, I think, ready to go for October. So
sweet.
We're about to get a lot of HNP for spooky season. So that'll be back too. So thanks, everyone. I hope that this finds Peter and Joel doing well. Daryl usually flakes during Spooky Flix Fest.
Sure.
He's usually at a Comic-Con somewhere looking for a new ex-wife. So all the best to you guys. Long live Retro Movie Geek. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. Get all the spookiness you can handle this October by subscribing to Mom and Pop Video Shop on YouTube. You can also find Retro Movie Geek on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you dig up your podcasts. The eerie music you heard at the beginning and end of this episode was provided courtesy of Ed and Gavin and their band Midnight Syndicate. We want to thank them for the use of music from their album, The Brimstone Club. Want to sink your unkept and bloody claws into this and all of Midnight Syndicate's beautifully macabre music? Then go to midnightsyndicate.com. And remember, spooky is as spooky does.